Tonight, Dr. Ernest Hilaire hits the campaign trail for the Dominica Labour Party and says the riots and unrest in that country were planned in St. Lucia.
Be careful of the United Workers' Party. Very careful of them. Do not fall for their tricks.
The St. Lucia United Workers' Party fires back at Dr. Hilaire and asks law enforcement to question him about his supposed knowledge of criminality. And France crippled by the biggest strike in years. How a local union rep says the situation mirrors developments in St. Lucia. The details of these stories and more coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Thursday, the 5th of December 2019. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News on Flow Channel 117, also being simulcast on Kiss FM. Watch via our website www.caribbeanhottv.com or on our free Caribbean Hot FM mobile app. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. What is going on in Dominica was planned in St. Lucia. It's a damning allegation by SLP member Dr. Ernest Hilaire. Dr. Hilaire is on the campaign trail in Dominica, galvanizing support for the Dominica Labour Party headed by Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. Dr. Ernest Hilaire has charged the United Workers' Party in Dominica with being the same as St. Lucia's United Workers' Party. He took to the Dominica Labour Party's platform to make a case that the United Workers' Party government would be disastrous for Dominica. He went further to say that the civil unrest and riots in Dominica had its genesis in St. Lucia.
Be careful of the United Workers' Party. Very careful of them. Do not fall for their tricks. And I'll tell you something. You see all what's happening in Dominica? That's well planned. And it was planned in St. Lucia. It was planned in St. Lucia to happen in Dominica. And I'll tell you more. For what they're doing to Dominica, we have a responsibility in St. Lucia to make sure we vote them out at the next election.
Dr. Hilaire cautioned Dominicans that certain doom awaits them under a United Workers' Party government, and he drew examples from St. Lucia.
We had an employment program called NICE. They say we will make it nicer. They said that. You guys pay plea bill. We had a short-term employment program. They say they will make it long-term. And they fool the people. What did we end up with? The most corrupt government in St. Lucia, the most vindictive government in St. Lucia. And that is what is going to happen in Dominica if you ever vote the United Workers' Party.
The leadership of Dominica Labour Party's Roosevelt Skerrit was extolled by Dr. Hilaire, who praised the level of redevelopment of the island post-Hurricane Maria.
You see your Prime Minister? You have a great man in Roosevelt Skerrit. You have a great man in Roosevelt Skerrit. Let me tell you something. The first time I met Roosevelt Skerrit was far away in the Solomon Islands. He came to a Minister of Youth meeting, Commonwealth Ministers of Youth. That's a long time ago. And from the first time I met him, I knew he was going to be a great leader. I knew that. And let me tell you, one of my proudest moments as a West Indian was listening to Roosevelt Skerrit speak at the United Nations after the hurricane.
Dr. Hilaire told the gathering of Dominica Labour Party supporters not to give in to the fear by the United Workers' Party and to ensure that they come out in their numbers to re-elect Skerrit's Labour Party. Now, a call is being made for the first deputy political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, to be questioned by law enforcement. That call is coming from a senior official of the United Workers' Party here in St. Lucia, Nancy Charles. Charles says Dr. Hilaire should be sent home to answer to claims which he made, stating that the political unrest taking place in Dominica was planned in St. Lucia. Dr. Hilaire's words, she says, are both shocking and appalling. Rochelle Gonzalez reports.
The first deputy political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, might have landed himself in hot water over recent comments which he made whilst on the Dominican campaign trail. Dr. Hilaire's statement that the unrest and riots plaguing the sister nation in the run-up to the next general elections were planned in St. Lucia has been picked up by senior official of the United Workers' Party, Nancy Charles, who is now calling for him to be sent back to St. Lucia to answer to his statement. Charles said if Dr. Hilaire's words are true, then he should be made to expose the persons behind the chaos.
The United Workers' Party is very surprised at the statements made by Dr. Hilaire on a political platform in Dominica, indicating that he knows that the riots and the criminal activities that have been happening in Dominica over the last few weeks have been planned in St. Lucia. So for us as a party, what we are calling on the authorities, both in Dominica and in St. Lucia, to bring Dr. Hilaire in for questioning, ask him to give the names of those persons who's been planning those illegal activities, ask him to give the information because he knows who, he knows where, and in order for us to find out what is happening in Dominica and to stop that, Dr. Hilaire seems to have inside information as to where and what has been happening.
Charles said due to the seriousness of the crimes being committed, part of the fate of Dominica lies in Dr. Hilaire's hands and that he should cooperate to bring an end to the madness.
As a parliamentarian, I'm sure everybody would appreciate that our parliamentarians must lead by example, and so we're calling on Dr. Hilaire in that instance to lead by example. Tell the people of Dominica, of St. Lucia, the authorities, who has been planning those illegal activities and those riots and where they've been planning so that persons can be arrested and be brought to justice. But the people of Dominica cannot continue to suffer because Dr. Hilaire is withholding information.
Dominicans are to head to the polls to vote for their next Prime Minister on Friday, the 6th of December. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
While Dominican opposition leader Lennox Linton has sent out a warning to all OECS member states, asking them to stay out of the country and to refrain from sending in any emergency security assistance, St. Lucia's National Security Minister Herman Gil Francis has revealed that officers will be deployed. According to veteran journalist Earl Busquet, on the other hand, Linton has threatened to call on the OAS to intervene should the need arise.
Veteran journalist Earl Busquet has indicated that Dominica's opposition leader Lennox Linton's lack of confidence in securing a victory in the next general election has led to him issuing a warning to other OECS nations, asking them to refrain from butting in. Busquet said Linton is seeking to win Friday's election beyond the ballot box through the creation of situations that will result in the need for external intervention to keep the peace. However, the internal intervention that he is eyeing is not from neighboring nations.
Mr. Linton said 1 week ago that he's calling on all of the OECS and CARICOM countries to stay out, to not respond positively to any request by Prime Minister Skerrit for emergency security assistance. And on this past Sunday, 1 week later, he made it absolutely clear two things. He said, one, if there is any indication that he is allowed to feel that the elections have been stolen, then Prime Minister Skerrit will end up facing the same consequences as his friend, the president of Bolivia. That is number one. And number two, he said, and yes, I will not hesitate to call on the OAS.
Busquet said the Organization of American States, OAS, was not established to intervene in the affairs of member states, but rather to facilitate the unity between said member states. He said, therefore, the only thing that Linton could be referring to is what is called the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, which is signed by the member states of the OAS.
If any leader of any OAS country is recognized as the leader, whether it is the actual leader or someone else who proclaims himself interim leader, once that person calls on the OAS, whose Secretary General Luis Almagro is said by Prime Minister Skerrit to be the main mastermind behind the external plan, if he were to receive a request from Mr. Linton to commit OAS troops into Dominica, who would be going in there? U.S. troops, because the United States is the biggest funder of the OAS. The OAS is based in Washington, and the United States of America has the largest amount of troops.
Meanwhile, National Security Minister Hermangild Francis has revealed that St. Lucia will indeed be sending troops over to Dominica. Francis said around 8 officers will be going to the sister island, and they consist of persons who have volunteered to come back from vacation.
We are members of the RSS, Regional Security System. The treaty indicates that any country that requires assistance when it comes to civil unrest and for crime, that we are duty bound to assist. So I've discussed this matter with the Prime Minister, and we have agreed to assist Dominica with a number of officers.
The clock, Busquet said, is ticking in Dominica, and one can only pray that the results will be decisive, that all parties will accept the results, and that the results will be certified by the OAS and all other observer teams that were invited by the government of Dominica, including CARICOM, the United Nations, the British Commonwealth, and the Carter Center. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
The newly elected president of the National Principals Association, Valerie St. Helen Henry, says it is time to increase efforts in the fight against child abuse. Speaking against the backdrop of a recent viral video, Henry says the ban on corporal punishment in schools was a step in the right direction. But she says it is quite apparent that the issue of excessive flogging must be addressed in the home environment. Jacques Wooding tells us more.
The suspension and eventual banning of corporal punishment is in keeping with St. Lucia's obligations to fulfill its mandates under various conventions which protect and promote children's rights. However, National Principals Association President Valerie St. Helen Henry says this only prohibited the ability of educators to physically discipline students, and as such does little to address the overall issue of child abuse on island. She says public awareness efforts must be increased to tackle this prevalent issue in the home.
We do have a lot of children coming to our schools who are being abused physically, sexually, and it's a lot for us at the school. So it's a two-way process, whereas we are the Ministry of Education is guiding the schools in terms of the abolishing of the corporal punishment. I think the authorities involved, the agencies involved in relation to dealing with the home and the issues at home, they should focus a little more in providing more guidance and support for parents and adults.
She says that within the education sector, there is a protocol in place to provide assistance to students who have been identified as victims of abuse. However, there is little that can be done by teachers to continue this assistance beyond the school environment.
We are in the process in terms of the corporal punishment at schools, but in relation to the home and the what happens at home, there are laws, there are rules and regulations that governs if a parent is found abusing a child. There are certain processes. If it comes through the school, we have to refer certain matters either to social services or the counselor. We bring in the parents. We provide some form of parental skills for them in terms of dealing with those issues.
Henry underscores the importance of educators ensuring that students understand their rights and responsibilities. She says it cannot be ignored that the young lady in the viral video did commit a dishonest act, but at no point should this have warranted the aunt's actions.
We know that the children, they all have their rights and as well as their responsibility. We do not know the whole story. That's the other thing, because yes, that adult was out of order. The form of punishment that she was using could have been she could have used some other form of measure to discipline the student, because in the end the child did take something without asking, and we should not forget that. And that's one of the things we try to do here in terms of teaching them their rights, but they also need to know their responsibility as students.
She says the NPA is currently exploring disciplinary practices that do not infringe on the rights of a child. She hopes that when these practices are commissioned within schools, the wider society will follow suit. For Hot 7 News, I am Jacques Wooding.
The Catholic Church in Dominica has condemned what it described as disrespectful behavior towards two high-ranking clergymen by people protesting for electoral reform on the island. Bishop of the Diocese of Roseau, Gabriel Malzé, and Cardinal Kelvin Felix were accosted by protesters in Marigot on Monday as they made their way to the airport through roadblocks. In a statement on Wednesday, the Catholic clergy in Dominica said the incidents were acts of disgrace and disrespect not only to the head of the Catholic Church in Dominica, but to the clergy and the lay faithful as well. The statement reads in part, quote, "While we recognize the dissatisfaction and passion associated with the issue of electoral reform and political positions in general, we believe that there are more humane and civil methods of expressing concerns and resolving conflicts," end quote. The Church said further that it has spoken out on numerous occasions about electoral reform. Archdeacon of the Anglican Church, Christian Glasgow, has weighed in on the matter.
One must understand that politics is the business of the people. The church has to be involved in the business of the people. I believe, however, that the church ought not to be involved in partisan politics. That is to say, where the church seems to be biased to any particular political party, since the church has to administer to all and sundry. And if the church is seen to be aligned to a particular party, it immediately debilitates it and limits its ability to remain above the fray and to minister to all and sundry. I think the point must also be made that the church ought not to allow itself to be directed by public opinion, but the church must have a systematic approach as to how it deals with the issues that affect the lives of the people to whom it is ministering.
That was St. Lucian-based Archdeacon Christian Glasgow. This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, market vendors are up in arms about a delayed repatriation to the Castries market. A local union rep weighs in on the nationwide protests that have virtually brought France to a halt and says how different the situation would have played out in St. Lucia. An artist band together and say enough is enough. That and more coming up after the break.